Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And while it will be a great day when that happens, I would note to my colleague, the ranking member, we're not quite there yet, David. And we also have a slightly different definition of how agriculture is impacted by these SEC issues.
Well, when you know you're once chairman, you're always chairman, and you the same, Chairman.
You are obviously a great ranking member. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That said, since the Biden administration could not successfully implement its climate agenda through Congress, when they controlled both houses, of course, and the White House, it's turned to the agencies to implement climate policy unilaterally. At the SEC, the climate rule aims to implement climate policy under the guise of security regulation. Now, Mr. Wright, you discussed in your testimony and with Chairman McHenry how your company's been impacted by this SEC rule. Could you expand on that, on how this rule goes beyond the purpose of securities regulation?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, securities regulation essential. SEC's done a great job. My beef is not with the SEC. But yeah, this is going into a complex topic of climate change, which we don't get specific numbers like we do for financial accounting. My other maybe philosophical problem with it, what's the net impact going to be? It's just going to we're going to get sued more. It's going to be harder to do business in this industry. We backed a very small company, Nomad, who had a technology to produce sand instead of at a mine and you got to truck it 60 miles, a mine right near the well, so that we could reduce driving truck traffic, not dry the sand. You know, of course, our industry is driving to do things better, but now that little private company, these couple scrappy entrepreneurs, since we are their dominant investor, we have some control over them, they're gonna have to figure out how they're gonna count their greenhouse gas emissions instead of running their small business so that we can report them up the chain. I view it as cumbersome, clunky, and not really a climate policy. How are we gonna drive innovation and improve greenhouse gas emissions by making best guesstimates on subjective numbers, as opposed to talking about technologies and big pictures and real progress?
Clearly, no industry is insulated from this, and the energy sector is seriously harmed, and manufacturers of all sizes will be impacted. And I think very clearly the climate rule will hit farmers and ranchers too. Some supporters of the final rule have praised the complete removal of the disclosure requirements for Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions. Unfortunately, I think this is a mischaracterization of the rule. While the rule scales back the explicit disclosure requirements for Scope 3 emissions, many public companies must still collect emission data from their supply chains to comply with this rule. Mr. Roisman, could you discuss how public companies in many instances will still need to collect this greenhouse gas information, this data?
So I will say I think many companies are relieved that they will not have to do explicit line item Scope 3 disclosure. However, there are interpretive questions today about what companies may have to do. And one such example is if a company decides that they have a material target, climate-related target or goal, something that could be net zero or reduction in Scope 3 emissions, they're required to provide investors with enough information to understand the progress they've made it. So if you're required to talk about progress, you're going to have to talk about Scope 3, how you've done every year. And so I think there is concern that even though there's no line item disclosure, you're still going to qualitatively at least have to talk about how you're meeting those goals and the progress you made. And this is an issue that is unclear in the rule. People are scouring footnotes, looking at statements, and if the SEC wants to clarify that you won't have to do any Scope 3 emission disclosure, I'm hopeful that they're going to do that soon.
Mr. Stebbins, could you offer your expertise on this?
I'm a securities lawyer. I would tell people if they're setting goals or have set goals, they're going to need to do Scope 3 work in order to make to do the analysis, to give people an update based on what I read in the release. And also, I would say that it says you only have to put Scope 1 and 2, and if material, the only way to judge materiality is to do the work. So you're going to have to, even if you're not reporting it, you're still going to have to do the work determining 1 and 2. But I think 3 is in there, the way I read the rule. And there's also something in there about reaching out to your suppliers and determining the effects on your customers and suppliers based on climate risks to your business. So to say that the food chain up and down, your value chain of customers and suppliers isn't going to be affected in this, I think is an overstatement.
Gentleman's time is
Go back,
expired.
Mr. Chairman.